Hello and welcome to the Ice Guys, brought to you by the National Hockey Now Network. This is the show that takes you into the world of the National Hockey League. Every game, every day, from a betting perspective. With pro sports handicappers, Ian Cameron, Alex B. Smith, and various guests from the world of hockey and sports betting. And now, here's your host, Ian Cameron.
Welcome to the Ice Guys, presented by National Hockey Now, Tuesday, January 17th. Ian Cameron and Alex B. Smith momentarily. As his laptop reboots, he'll be alongside as well, ready to break down the Tuesday NHL card. 8 games on tap tonight, breaking those down. A bigger Monday than usual with the NHL slate yesterday, with it being the holiday and Martin Luther King Day. Lots of day games in the NHL yesterday. The afternoon actually didn't. The first 2 games, it was like bad, good type of day for me. The day started off rough. I took a shot, and I mentioned this on the Sunday show when we talked about the very 2 early games for Martin Luther King Day. I was going to take a shot with the 2 underdogs, the Flyers and the Sabres, and both of them didn't have a chance really in either of those games. The Flyers get trounced by the Bruins 6-0, abruptly ending Philadelphia's little hot streak in that game. And Buffalo, very disappointing effort from them against the Florida Panthers at home, 4-1 yesterday. We did pick it up, though. We had a couple of overs, and all of them cashed, actually. We had a 3-0 sweep through the late games with Detroit, Colorado over, as well as New Jersey team total over, and the full game over against the San Jose Sharks, which got there thanks to Jack Hughes tying it up in the dying seconds of that game. That was a very good to see that for sure yesterday, as New Jersey gets a 4-3 win in overtime. Colorado puts the boots to Detroit 6-3. It looks like the Avalanche starting to get their game back together again. We were waiting for this team to just, hit the accelerator and get back on track and maybe go on a bit of a hot streak and, string some wins together. It's starting to look that way right now for the Avalanche with back-to-back convincing blowout wins against Ottawa and Detroit. Now, granted, not great competition, but you have to start by showing that you can, overpower inferior teams, and the Avalanche now have done that successfully in back-to-back games. We had Dallas shutting out Vegas 4-0. Ended up staying off Vegas. Glad I did. Dallas, a very nice road performance, and Peter DeBoer returns to Vegas now as head coach of the Stars and gets a victory there. Seattle, I guess not overly unexpected, sees their win streak come to an end. We knew it was a tricky spot. First home game off a road trip, and now these fucking moron schedule makers have Seattle playing tonight. Can you imagine putting a team through this kind of shit? I mean, seriously. I mean, you're on this long road trip, several games, Edmonton, Toronto, Ottawa, Montreal, Boston, Chicago, back home, all the way to the Pacific Northwest for one game. Oh, you know what? You got to go on the road with no day off. The very next night, play a back-to-back in Edmonton. How fucked is that? It's terrible. It's a brutal job by the schedule makers. Now, look, Seattle's not the only team to suffer this kind of bad scheduling and this kind of very tricky, bad scheduling with tons of travel, shit ton of travel, lots of games in a compact, short period of time. But nevertheless, it's ridiculous every time I've seen it. I've seen this shit with so many teams put through this rigorous schedule that really could be avoided, quite honestly. You got to do better than that. I get it. There's building conflicts. I get it. There's other things that these arenas use for live events, concerts, other events. I get it. Sometimes you just can't fit the schedule in and fit the game in, that particular game, when you want to. But you've got to do better than this. You've got to do better than this scheduling for a hockey team. Yeah, how do you put them through this kind of thing? You know what you do? If you're going to they started that road trip in Edmonton, and maybe they just don't want Seattle to play Edmonton twice on the same road trip. Because remember, that road trip started in Edmonton, where Seattle is playing tonight. What you do is, who cares about that? Who cares about that? What you do is, if you're going to start in Edmonton and they're going to play in Edmonton, they're going to start that road trip in Edmonton and they're going to play in Edmonton tonight. What you do is Edmonton, Toronto, Ottawa, Montreal, Boston, Chicago. You play in Edmonton, and then you go back home, you play Tampa, and you keep them at home. That's what you do. That's what anyone with a brain at the NHL offices that come up with these schedules should be thinking. But unfortunately, they're not thinking that way right now. So it's really unfortunate because this is as bad as I've seen. And there's been some horrific scheduling situations for teams already appear many times this season. This could be one of the worst of the bunch. It really could be. I mean, play Edmonton because they don't want to play in They don't want see the NHL. I know how they're thinking. They don't want Seattle to play in Edmonton twice on the same road trip. No, they got to go back home for that one game. Then you play in Edmonton. It's almost like it's another road trip. So it's asinine. It's ridiculous. That shouldn't even factor into the decision. Play in Edmonton. At the end, do a bookend. You start the road trip in Edmonton, you finish the road trip in Edmonton, then you go home, you play that Tampa game, and you keep them at home for like a little homestand so they can at least catch their breath, not have to travel again. Holy goodness, terrible. But anyway, that's enough of that. It's bad. We know it. All right, so other games last night, breaking my heart, the Anaheim Ducks, man. And I really was foolish not taking Pittsburgh when it was 3-2 Anaheim. I should have known they'd cough up the tying goal. They did. And obviously, they win in overtime. Jake Gensel with the overtime winner in that game. Hey, I'll tell you what, I'm satisfied though, even though we don't have a win to show for it. I'm satisfied with my thought process that Anaheim was live in that game, that Pittsburgh wasn't worthy of minus 320 favorites, and it proved that way. They weren't worthy of minus 320 favorites. Lucky as shit to pull out the win last night against the Anaheim Ducks in that game by a score of 4-3. And that won't be the first time I fade Pittsburgh when they're laying that kind of price. If I see it again, I'll be pulling the trigger on a dog in this price range again against this Penguins team because they just aren't playing that dominant level of hockey to be a minus 320 favorite at any point, at this point in time. Rangers with a nice solid, workman-like 3-1 victory on the road against Columbus. And the fade Jarl Halak stuff for me, I've got to probably pump the brakes with that. He's playing very well right now. Another solid start in net for Halak. They did defend pretty well in that game as well in front of him, but nevertheless, he's on a very good run lately. I believe that's now 5 straight starts that he has won. So the Rangers get a 3-1 win in Columbus. Capitals, which I was very happy to see this, come back from a 3-0 deficit, beat the Islanders 4-3 in overtime. Good to see that because the way that game started for the Capitals, I'm like, wow, is this team's got some problems right now, struggling and scuffling, but they pulled up their bootstraps and they come all the way back and they get the overtime win against the Islanders by a score of 4-3 last night. Nashville with a 2-1 win against Calgary. I mean, UC Saros, another terrific game in net from him for the Nashville Predators. He was outstanding, made a couple of huge saves, especially when that game was still 2-1 for Nashville in the third period. So an excellent job by the Predators and UC Saros in particular last night. And look, unfortunately for Markstrom, he didn't play that bad, but another loss on his resume as Nashville gets a 2-1 win. And the St. Louis Blues in a very low-scoring battle defeat Ottawa 2-1. Very, very bad sign for the Ottawa Senators that they talked the talk about, wiping away the stench of the 7-0 blowout loss to Colorado, and they did not walk the walk. You fall behind 2-0 in that game in the first period. Not the effort we expected from the Ottawa Senators after a very awful loss, and especially playing a very depleted at the moment St. Louis Blues team. So that was definitely a disappointing result for Ottawa, and signs that, you wonder if this team is talking this nonsense. And right now, to me, it is nonsense about, buying at the trade deadline, looking at Matt Dumba and looking at all these other defensemen and trying to add to the blue line like there's some big-time cup contender. Right now, they're not. They couldn't be further from being a big-time cup contender. I mean, to me, we're starting to but the problem is, you can't say, oh, you know what, we just got to tread water here and, not add at the deadline. They committed in the offseason. Pierre Dorion, the GM of the Senators, committed in the offseason to building this roster up so that they could contend for the playoffs and maybe even a dark horse cup contender. And right now they're neither. And they're stuck. You can't really say now when you bring in an Alex DeBrincat and you bring in a Claude Giroux, and you make all these big time additions And even though you're struggling right now, it's hard to say, you know what, we're just going to stand pat and not buy. And you can't sell. You're not in a situation where you're rebuilding anymore because you committed in the offseason to not, to speeding up the rebuilding process and trying to be a playoff team this year. So you're stuck if you're Ottawa. You're absolutely stuck where you probably still have to try to add pieces to this team, specifically defense on the blue line at the trade deadline. And you just got to hope like hell it's good enough for you to go on a second half surge and make the playoffs. Otherwise, you're going to end up out of the playoffs. You're not going to be in the draft lottery, most likely, or well, you will be probably. Yeah, all those teams at the bottom are, but your percentage obviously is going to be a lot less to land the number one overall pick, the fish at the end of the reel, if you will, Connor Bedard. So you're going to be in a position possibly where you're in no man's land here, out of the playoffs, and maybe you finish 2, 3, 4 points out of the playoffs, and you're not going to be a big time factor in the draft lottery, and you're not going to be a playoff team, which was your goal coming into the season, which means kind of a lost season could happen for this Ottawa team. So what they do, the way they play as a team in the next month before the trade deadline is imperative. This is a huge next 30 days or so for the Ottawa Senators, where if they continue to struggle and they can't get on a run of any kind, I don't even think they're going to be in a proper position to be buyers at the trade deadline. In an Eastern Conference, the top to bottom is much tougher than it's been in years past. So this is as tough as it's ever been to make the playoffs in the Eastern Conference. I don't think there's much denying that or argument. It is difficult. It is a very strong conference, as stronger as it's been in years, top to bottom. And so if you're the Ottawa Senators and you don't put a run together in this next month, you might have to alter those plans that, hey, we're going to bring in a Matt Dumba. We're going to trade for this guy. We're going to trade for that guy. We got to push for the playoffs. You might be in a position where you're already too far behind the fucking 8 ball to do anything about it. So that's going to be the issue for the Ottawa Senators moving forward. That's why this next month is going to be so important for them. All right. That is last night. We're still waiting on Alex. We'll get the card started for this Tuesday and the 8 games. Let's begin in Washington. We've got the Minnesota Wild taking on the Washington Capitals. Minnesota minus 130, road favorites, 6 the total here in this game. Capitals obviously back-to-back for them after the big-time comeback against the New York Islanders. Not exactly a bet-on spot for Washington. You have that kind of comeback victory, and you play the very next night. Not the easiest situation and turnaround necessarily. You look at the Capitals throughout the course of this season, 1-4 as well on the second night of back-to-back games, which definitely is not what you want to see in this kind of a situation here with the Wild off that, or the Capitals rather, after that big comeback win, which snapped a 2-game losing streak to the same team. They've lost back-to-back to the Philadelphia Flyers. Minnesota, on the other hand, back-to-back wins for them against, also they beat the Islanders 3-1, and then they came back home and played Arizona. Not pretty. I think it was a little bit of a sleepwalk, a little lethargic, definitely from what I saw, and I watched portions of that Wild Coyotes game. There was sleepwalk effort is what it was for the Wild, but they did enough. They got the win by a score of 2-1. In that game against the Coyotes. We'll see how they fare here. They've won 3 of the last 4 meetings against the Washington Capitals, including 2 in a row here in the nation's capital, beating Washington 2-1 4 years ago. And then last year, a 5-1 victory in Washington in favor of the Minnesota Wild as underdogs. I could only look at Minnesota here. I agree with the price where it's going. Now at minus 130, I think, the value is kind of slipping away a little bit, but I understand why. The money's come in on Minnesota. I got in at minus 110 on them for a small play, not anything significant, but definitely did bet Minnesota more toward even money. Like I said, it's gone up now to minus 130. Philip Gustafson, by the way, will be a net for the Minnesota Wild tonight in this game. Obviously, with Darcy Kemper getting the nod last night against the New York Islanders, there's a decent chance he gets rested tonight, and you'll see Charlie Lindgren get the starting assignment here for the Capitals in between the pipes. So we'll keep an eye on that. Something you also want to keep an eye on here in this game, Dylan Strome was moving up the lineup for Washington as far as the prop market goes. They put him up a little bit, and we'll see if that continues here tonight. Centering that top line with Sheary and Ovechkin probably lends to some value for his props tonight in this game. By the way, Matt Boldy, here's another angle I like when it comes to player props. Matt Boldy gets the contract extension done with the Minnesota Wild, and they've been working away at it. Billy Guerin with Matt Boldy and his agent, obviously, and finally they get the big deal done. 7 years, $49 million extension with the Minnesota Wild. So the point of all that is, from a prop standpoint, is a lot of times the player gets the big money deal, he gets re-upped. There's a little bit of a pep in his step the first game after the big contract signing. There's definitely that, hey, I signed the big deal, I signed the big money, now I got to make good on it, right? I got to produce, I got to get shit done here. I got to live up to what this team has committed for me, or to me here with this big contract. So I'd expect a good game from Matt Boldy tonight for the Minnesota Wild. And of all the props on the board, definitely interest in him from a prop standpoint. Can't go wrong with Sammy Steele for the Wild. He's been very good in the center spot on the top line between Kaprizov and Zuccarello for them. I mean, you look at the numbers for Sam Steele dating back to the New Year's Eve, I should say, December 31st game at St. Louis. This guy has scored at least a point in all but one game. He has points in 6 of the last 7 games for the Minnesota Wild, and a grand total of 7 points in those games for them, including a couple of goals. So there's no doubt he has been in on a lot of the offensive production lately for the Minnesota Wild. As far as Boldy goes, look, and actually this is a good time, I think, for him to maybe make an impact tonight, because he's actually, for his standards, it's a little bit of a slump going into tonight. 5 straight games without a point for Matt Boldy coming into tonight against Washington. So it actually probably is a prime opportunity for him to find the back of the net. Again, you just got the big contract extension, maybe a chance here to try to show the fan base, the management team, hey, I'm ready to deliver the goods with this big 7-year deal I just got. So Boldy and Steele, I think, are pretty good prop options here if you're going to look in that direction for the Minnesota Wild in this game. I'm kind of neutral when it comes to the total on this one. I didn't bet it over, and I don't lean under either, but not rushing to bet it over, because I'll say this about Lindgren. If he does get the start tonight for the Capitals, his numbers are still pretty solid overall. 2.59 goals against average, .912 save percentage. I mean, the Capitals have gotten unbelievable work out of him. He has not given up more than 3 goals in any start since the beginning of December, which is damn impressive. It really is. And if you actually look at his win-loss record as of late for the Capitals when he's been the starting goalie, I'm counting it up right now. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I mean, we're looking at 9-2. Charlie Lindgren in his last 11 starts here for the Washington Capitals. So he's been very solid. That being said, it's still a massive spot advantage for Minnesota here. So that's why I took the Wild. Again, a better price than what's out there now, but still at -130, lean Wild in this one. All right, Florida and Toronto. We've got the Leafs -180, home favorite, 6.5 the total in this one. Toronto coming off the disappointing setback against the Boston Bruins on Saturday night. That was a hell of a hockey game. I can't say it enough how good that hockey game was, Leafs Bruins on Saturday night. You want a game that had everything from a fan standpoint, from an entertainment perspective. That game had everything. It had great goals, beauty plays, great pass that was made by Marchand to Bergeron on one of the Boston goals. Pasternak had a great finish on one. Matthews had a terrific goal to tie the game. That game had physicality. It had intensity. It had one of the better fights of the entire season between Wayne Simmons and Nick Foligno. It was a game that had it all. Great goaltending. Allmark and Murray both took turns making some big saves in that one. That's what you want to see in a hockey game. That had everything. And that's why it makes this sport so good. When you get a game like that, the Leafs were on the losing end of a game like that, of course, against the Bruins. They'll be looking to bounce back. That's now 2 losses in a row for the Leafs as they return home here, face the Florida Panthers. One thing we know about the Leafs is losing streaks have been few and far between since that road trip from hell against the California teams, actually, and Vegas, they had a 4-game losing streak, that brutal road trip. Remember that back in late October, that road trip that was so bad that people were thinking Sheldon Keefe might get axed following that road trip as head coach. They lost at Vegas 3-1. They got swept by the California teams, the Sharks, the Kings, the Ducks. They were all victorious against the Leafs. And since that time, since that 4-game losing streak, this team has not lost more than 2 consecutive games in a row. So that's what's on the line here. They have not lost 3 in a row, the Leafs, since that road trip from hell way back in late October. So, definitely it's a spot play, I think, on Toronto for me. I'm not interested in Florida, although Florida has picked their game up the last couple, although I don't know how much you want to say they picked it up beating Vancouver 4-3 at home. Vancouver is just an absolute dumpster fire, issues on and off the ice. But going to Buffalo yesterday afternoon, early start for a road team, it's never easy, and beating the Sabres 4-1. I mean, that was a very good game from the Panthers. Very good. 34-29, they outshot the Sabres. Bobrovsky was, for a change, rock solid in between the pipes. They capitalized on their chances, so give them credit. It was definitely a solid performance there for the Florida Panthers in that game. We'll see who's in net, and they've got a quandary with their goaltending because I don't know if they want to play Bobrovsky on a back-to-back. Now, it is a road back-to-back, but an afternoon game yesterday, a night game tonight. So it could make things a little easier for Bobrovsky if Paul Maurice decides to go in that direction and put Bobrovsky in there for a second straight day. I don't know if he will. Of course, Spencer Knight's still on IR, so he is completely out of the question. And look, the Panthers aren't saying anything about his injury. They just that he's on IR, no details, upper body, lower body. I mean, that's where we are now with these injury reports. We can't even get upper body and lower body designations from these fucking teams. No, we're not going to say shit. We're just going to say, undisclosed injury, and, we'll leave it for you to figure it out. Come on. I mean, and these leagues try to cozy up to sports betting now, and they want their piece of the pie. They want their money, from sports betting and promoting it and having deals with all the different sports books and ads on their games on television for DraftKings, FanDuel, yada, yada, every single book known to man. And if you value the sports bettors and the sports betting community, give us a fucking injury report, an accurate one, and say, this is the estimated timeline. This is the body part of injury. I don't care what the body part is, his shoulder, his arm, his groin, his dick, whatever the case is. We want to know. We should know. It's frustrating when I see this. Undisclosed. They won't even tell upper body or lower body now with Spencer Knight. It's insane. It's ridiculous. It's absurd. Give us some info, especially if you value the sports bettors and that you claim to now that you're cozying up and making all these deals with sports books left and right. My gosh, it's ridiculous. Holy crap. Can we get some injury info, some accurate info? Can you treat us with some respect? My gosh, it's absolutely ridiculous. So I had to sound off on that because I was researching this game this morning, tapping the games like I normally do, and I see here we go. We've got this injury on Knight, and we're not even being told upper or lower body. At least for years you've given us that. You've thrown us a little bit of a bone. Upper body injury, lower body injury. You've given us that. But my goodness, we're not even getting that now in terms of information regarding these player injuries. So it's frustrating, especially the handicappers, the better people that, want to put their hard-earned money down and want to know this info, need to know it. But it is what it is. So it's either going to be Bobrovsky on a back-to-back or it's going to be Alex Lyon, potentially, who might start tonight for the Florida Panthers. Alex Lyon has been, well, let's be honest, he's been pretty much AHL for most of his career. He's made a handful of starts in the NHL, most of them with the Philadelphia Flyers. He was in their organization for about 4 seasons, 11, 13, 16, 22 games in those 4 seasons with the Flyers, 2 games with Carolina after that, 2.91 goals against average in his career here for the in his NHL career, that is. But he had a couple rough seasons there. The seasons where he started more games, he had 5 goals against. He had a couple that were 3.56 goals against. So we'll have to see if he ends up getting the nod tonight. But not exactly someone you fully trust at the NHL level based on some of the numbers we've seen in the past from Alex Lyon when he's had this opportunity. So it's going to be interesting to see. Matt Murray will be in net for the Leafs. It has been confirmed they're going back to the well with Matt Murray in this game, which is a little bit of a deviation from Sheldon Keefe's regular pattern of going back and forth between the goalies. So we'll see if Lyon starts or Bobrovsky starts. But either way, in this game, I think Toronto, it sets up nicely for them. It is worth noting against Florida on home ice, they have won two of the last, they've won, two of the last three meetings. Last year, these teams played once here in Toronto, and it ended up being a 5-2 victory in favor of the Leafs in that game. So I'm probably looking here in this game at a Toronto first period puck line in regulation split bet here. It's probably what I'm going to look toward here. So Toronto first period puck line, you can get that at -0.5 plus 140 with first period puck line, and also Toronto in regulation. Split it up between the two, and the Leafs in regulation. Currently, you can find that price close to even money here in this game. Toronto in regulation at around -110, -115. So that's the way we're going to play it here. Leafs first period puck line and in regulation split here against the Florida Panthers. As far as the total goes, we've seen some high scoring affairs. I definitely think the over is probably the way to go here in this game. It certainly will be if Lyon is in net. It might even be the way to go if Bobrovsky's in net, because you know how I feel when it's the same goalie that's playing on back-to-back days. I don't necessarily always trust them to play at a high level. So over 6.5 is the only way I would go here in terms of the total in this game. And keep in mind, this series history with these two teams has trended at a 5-1-1 to the over clip in the last 7 head-to-head meetings. 5-1-1 to the over the last 7 games between these teams. So we've seen 7-5, 8-4, 5-3, 5-3, 5-2, 7-6. Some real back and forth affairs between these two teams. And we did have an under finally at the last meeting they had last season down in Florida. It ended up being 3-2 for the Panthers, but no question about it. It's been one of those, back and forth, high scoring affairs. The combo bet is worth a sprinkle too. And that's probably why I'm with these games now, especially as we get with these bigger favorites and the season continues to progress. It's worth your while to sprinkle. If you like a team, and I like Toronto here, you don't put it all on regulation. You don't put it all on the first period puck line. What you do is you sprinkle you pepper it around, smaller bets, but pepper it around. Different options, different ways to go about getting at Toronto tonight. First period puck line, little on that. Toronto in regulation, little on that. That combination bet, Toronto money line and over 5.5 at plus 140, plus 150, plus 160 with that at some spots. Put a little on that as well, because you could definitely, it's just a way, because you could see a game where Toronto wins. Let's say Toronto wins 3-2. Leafs and over 5.5 loses. The regulation cashes. Maybe they're up 1-0 after the first period. That cashes, and you don't lose everything tied up in one type of bet for that team. You know what I mean? That's what I'm getting at here, that if you just divvy it up a little bit, put a little on a Leaf rate in regulation, a little on the first period puck line, a little on that Leaf and over 5.5 combo, there's a chance you could sweep all three. Of course you could, but in case 1 or 2 doesn't hit, you're not going to just lose everything. If you go 1-2 or 2-1, you're going to cash a few. And you're going to get out of it, with some money intact. So that's definitely the goal with that. So it's something to keep in mind just in terms of strategy with your betting this time of year in the NHL. All right, Winnipeg Jets, Montreal Canadiens. Quickly, actually, I should point out on the last game, prop-wise for this game. Right now for the Leafs, Matthews, you never get great value with him, but I get the sense he might be starting to heat up right now for this team. He's now got 4 goals in the last 6 games. He's now gone 6 straight games with a point. He's starting to get it going again for the Leafs. Marner, it goes without saying, has been excellent. Nylander's the one that's cooled off a little bit. Tavares has actually been very good in terms of points lately as well. He's on a 6-game point streak for the Leafs, but don't sleep on some of their depth players. Calle Yarncroke, we've talked about him. Pierre Engvall as well. Definitely keep an eye on them. They could be ready to make an impact here for the Leafs as well. As far as the Panthers go in this game, you've got a couple guys that are starting to actually get their game going a little bit. Reinhart for the Panthers is on a 4-game point streak. Sam Bennett, has scored goals in 2 of the last 4 games. He kind of had a little bit of a slump there for a while. And Brandon Montour on the blue line for the Panthers. Sneaky little, value option there if you're looking at player props, because Brandon Montour from the blue line for Florida now has 6 points in the last 6 games and a couple of goals as well during that span. So definitely some good player prop options here in this game, which could have goals in it between the Panthers and Leafs. All right, Jets and Canadians. Winnipeg minus 250, road favorites, 6 the total in this game. A lot of money's come in on the Jets. This opened as low as minus 180, and now we're seeing minus 250, minus 260 with this price across the board in this game. Montreal off a 2-1 big upset victory here against the New York Rangers. This team has suddenly gone win-loss, win-loss, win their last 6 games. So is this a spot for a loss if that pattern holds true? Potentially, and very likely, because obviously Winnipeg is playing excellent hockey, 8-1 in their last 9 games. They've played extremely well. They've won 3 straight head-to-head meetings here against the Montreal Canadiens. What's funny is that Montreal beat Winnipeg, when was it? A couple seasons ago during one of those COVID-impacted seasons. Remember, Montreal won in the playoffs against Winnipeg. That was the year they upset Toronto, and then they played Winnipeg in the first round. They won that. They got to the Stanley Cup final against Tampa Bay. And Winnipeg hasn't lost a regular season game against Montreal since that playoff series loss a couple of seasons ago, with Winnipeg going 3-0 head-to-head against Montreal, 8-4, 4-2, 3-2. Victories in those games. So, when you look at this matchup, Montreal is suddenly, not exactly a team that you want to automatically take the opponent team total over. I mean, now I've lost 2 in a row doing that. I took the Islanders team total over, the Rangers team total over, and those teams only score 3 combined goals. So I might look at something a little bit different here in this game rather than Winnipeg team total. I mean, Winnipeg should get the victory. I still don't know if I'll get involved in it, though, because, again, you're talking about a Winnipeg team that, the price in this game has gotten away a little bit. Regulation's gone up to as high as minus 160 now with the Jets. And then, of course, you could go puck line, but I'm not always fond of doing that necessarily. And it's minus 1.5 plus 100. So you could do a combo bet here with the Jets. Jets probably win, but just not overly comfortable with where the price is right now. 3 of the last 4 meetings, by the way, have gone under the total between these 2 teams. We'll see if that trend continues. Jets have suddenly trended under in 3 straight games. And to be honest, the Jets want to be more of an under team. Rick Bowness wants this team to be very solid defensively. They've played that way much of the season. It's going to be Connor Hellebuck and Samuel Montembeault in net for the respective teams tonight. Jake Allen, by the way, is still day-to-day with the upper body injury. That's why he remains out. But I will say this, Montembeault here in his last few starts, I'll give him a decent amount of credit. He's played better here in his last few outings in net. He gave up just the 1 goal in a great performance against the Rangers, 39 saves in the victory. And even against the Islanders, 2 goals on 38 shots. So he played very well in that game as well. So back-to-back real solid efforts in net for Montembeault, and they need him to be more than solid. They need him to be really good with the status of this blue line right now for the Montreal Canadiens. So for me, it's probably Winnipeg probably wins this game, but perhaps you go with first period puck line, and you go with full game puck line, maybe a little bit of both. But it's just a lukewarm opinion. At the end, I'm probably going to end up keeping this game off my card, but I do expect the Jets to probably get the victory. Again, Montreal been exchanging wins and losses lately. And props in this game, I mean, definitely, I mean, Caulfield, of course, it goes without saying, has been great for the Canadians. There's no question. Kirby Dach, of course, continues to get, impactful minutes, playing time, 3 goals in the last 5 games. You still get great value with him just to find the back of the net for Montreal. As far as Winnipeg goes, I mean, it's Scheifele, Dubois, Connor, continue to be excellent for this team. Josh Morrissey, from a points perspective, is always worth a look, from in terms of that prop, because he's just been terrific. Josh Norrisy, That's what they're calling him locally in Winnipeg because he's had such a good season on the blue line, the best season of his career by far. That he might end up having Norris Trophy consideration this season for them. So there's a couple props that you might want to consider here when it comes to the Jets and the Canadiens. All right, next up here as we continue along, it is Anaheim and Philadelphia. We've got the Flyers. You want to lay minus 200 with the Flyers? That's what you got to do here in this game. Minus 210, they are as home favorites. The total in this one currently 6, shaded to the over in this game between these two teams. The over is probably something I'll go with here as in this game if I were to bet anything. You got two bad teams, two teams where I worry about the defensive intensity a little bit. Of course, Anaheim continues to struggle mightily in terms of keeping the puck out of the net. That being said, they might be able to score some goals here because the one thing we've seen from the Ducks, even last night in the loss against Pittsburgh, was the offense starting to come back to life. 5 straight overs for the Anaheim Ducks going into this game. We know Philly has kind of trended more toward the over in their last 10 games as well. 6 of those games have gone over. Yesterday, though, 6-0 beat down at the hands of the Boston Bruins. Obviously not a good game from their standpoint. Anaheim lost at home to Philadelphia earlier this month, 4-1. Pretty poor performance by their standards. Tough loss for the Ducks last night. I mean, they actually had a 3-2 lead late, and that just shows you the kind of season that the Anaheim Ducks have had. 3-2 lead, about to get maybe a huge win on the road in upset fashion against the Pittsburgh Penguins. And sure enough, they just can't, finish the deal. They tie the game in the final minute, Pittsburgh. And once that happens, you knew, hey, Penguins are going to win this game in overtime. There's no question about that. They were an automatic to be winning in overtime after Anaheim coughed it up late. Now it's a tough turnaround. They're 0-7 in their last 7 games on a back-to-back. So the second night of back-to-back games, the Anaheim Ducks are winless in 7. So I'm totally off the side. There's no way I'm laying this kind of price with Philly, but at the same time, Anaheim, no. Took my shot at a better price than this. I'm not coming back to it after just a brutal loss like that and on a back-to-back where, again, this team is 0-7, their last 7 tries on a back-to-back. I'd stick to the over. I think the Ducks team total over might be worth a look too. That does make some sense to me. I mean, it's only over 2.5 at just a barely above even money, minus 115, minus 120. I could see the Ducks getting to 3 goals in this game. Keep in mind for the Philadelphia Flyers, Carter Hart got pulled yesterday against Boston. Samuel Ersson had to finish the game. For Anaheim, it looks like it'll be Anthony Stolarz, I would think, coming into the game for the Anaheim Ducks tonight, making the start after John Gibson was in net last night. Stolarz has been rough too this year, and especially of late. It's been a tough stretch for him. He gave up 4 goals in his last start against San Jose. He gave up 5 goals against Winnipeg before that, 5 goals against Dallas before that. So it has been definitely a rough stretch here in net for Stolarz as well, assuming he gets the nod for the Ducks tonight. That's not exactly a great bet-on situation with his struggles as well. Now, with these goalies, yeah, have they played poor at times? Yes, but a lot of it's just the product of this wretched defense in front of these goalies. But Stolarz has still not exactly played well on his own either. So definitely over 6 is the way I'm probably looking to eye this one. Maybe a smaller piece of the Ducks team total for me in this game as well. And as far as the prop market goes, look, I think it's Zegras and McTavish right now for the Ducks. Zegras is starting to pick his game up again. McTavish has been all around the puck lately for the Ducks. So you keep an eye on that, see how it goes. And then on the flip side here for Philadelphia, you can go in a bunch of different directions. Travis Konechny has had a phenomenal season. There's no question. Morgan Frost is finally starting to warm to the task a little bit here for the Flyers. He's been solid. Farabee's got 4 points in the last 3 games. Owen Tippett, 3 points in the last 3 games. Frost starting to show some signs. Noah Cates has chipped in here and there. So it's been, a little bit more from some of the forwards for the Flyers lately that they expected more from earlier in the season and now starting to play like it. So those are the ways I would go in terms of Ducks and Flyers. All right, that's the first half of the card. 200 people, by the way, watching live now on YouTube. Appreciate it very much. Hit the like button. Good time to remind you as well, our next Ice Guys Live betcast is a week from today, Tuesday, January 24th, live at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. It is a great Tuesday night NHL slate next week. Some really interesting games and a great night to have a live betcast. So live betting, commentary, bring your booze, bring your alcoholic liquor beverage, just even if it's water, whatever. It's a bar and a pub atmosphere with every betcast. It's a lot of fun. And if you want to join Alex and I live on the betcast, send me a DM or Alex a DM, either of us, and we'll make sure we reserve a spot for you on the betcast next Tuesday night next Tuesday night, January 24th, 7 p.m. Eastern Time. So make sure you join us for that. It'll be a lot of fun. Our first betcast of the new year, 2023. All right, back with the rest of the card right after we hear from Gramco.
All right, whether you or your team's game is on the field, screen, racetrack, or the ice, Gramco is for the game. Grown by farmers who spent years developing premium hemp genetics, Gramco provides customers with consistent quality Delta 8 products ready for any occasion. Gramco currently offers numerous Delta 8 products such as vape cartridges, disposable vapes, pre-rolls, gummies, wake and bake coffee, and more. Gramco offers an enjoyable legal high delivered discreetly and directly to you, and is also available at many American retailers as well. Get the best Delta 8 cannabis products on the market shipped quickly and discreetly from Gramco. If you visit www.thegramco.com, use promo code ICEGUYS, you get 25% off of any order, and all orders on the site that are $50 and higher are shipped free with standard shipping. So live elevated with Gramco and check out their wonderful Delta 8 products today.
All right, back here on the Ice Guys, and we roll on now the second half of this Tuesday NHL card, and we will begin it looking at the matchup between the Columbus Blue Jackets and the Nashville Predators. Nashville minus 210 home favorites, 6.5 the total in this game. It's Columbus on the road. It means I probably ain't back in Columbus, but you're talking minus 210 with Nashville. Back-to-back for both teams, but obviously for Nashville, much bigger advantage in that no travel for them. Columbus has to come in from Nationwide Arena after a victory or a loss to the Rangers, rather, last night, 3-1. Nashville victorious over the Calgary Flames last night, 2-1. Another just Rembrandt of a performance in net from UC Saros in that game. Probably on the back-to-back, we'll end up seeing Kevin Lankinen get the start here tonight for the for the Predators, rather, in this game on the back-to-back. Columbus, it is confirmed, Kevin Lankinen, 2.81 goals against, 918 save percentage. Not bad numbers. Obviously not Saros numbers, but solid. Daniil Tarasov in goal for the Jackets, 2-9, the record in his 11 starts, 3.4 goals against average, 907 save percentage. Of course, Merzlikins was in net last night, another loss for him. We talked about on the show yesterday with Alex and Connor Lacouve, our guest, that he was a goalie, by the way, about the issues with Merzlikins. It's not just physical, it's mental, it's in between the ears, it's emotional trauma, it's all this stuff. And the losses just keep mounting for this poor guy in net for the Jackets. But they'll turn to Tarasov tonight in between the pipes here in this game. This is another one I don't have a strong take on it. This is a really tricky card because there's so many teams that are on back-to-backs and two teams playing each other on back-to-backs tonight. So this is not the strongest Tuesday betting card, in my opinion, side or totals-wise. But it's hard to back Columbus on the road. Now, they did win their last road game, 4-3, against the Detroit Red Wings. A very solid victory for them in that game. Keep in mind, too, Columbus beat Nashville earlier this season in Columbus, 5-3. And they beat Nashville 4-3 in a shootout after that. 5 straight games between these two teams have gone over the total. So if I were to bet anything, it would be that over the number, especially because, look, a lot of the unders have been with Saros in net, probably with Lankinen versus Tarasov, again, whose numbers aren't great. You could see goals tonight in this game. I could be talked into maybe looking over 6.5 in this game. It is worth noting on a back-to-back, Columbus 4 overs, 3 unders, 3 overs and 3 unders for Nashville on the second night of back-to-back games for them. And keep in mind, too, with Nashville, 2-1 game last night, you'd think pretty tight checking. They gave up 39 shots to Calgary. Saros had to be really good, had to make some excellent saves in that game, no question. But definitely when you look at this game with Jackets and Predators, you see a situation where, both of these teams head-to-head have gone over the total. The Jackets are still 3 of their last 4 have gone over, and 5-2 to the over in their last 7 games overall. Keep that in mind. And again, this series history has been dominant over the total. 5 straight head-to-heads. Jackets, Predators have gone over. So I might add that to the card as over 6.5. I see something like that. I see, obviously, Lankinen in net for Nashville instead of Saros. You could make the case that we'll see goals tonight between the Jackets and the Rangers. As far as props go in this game, we've talked about, a lot of different good situations here for the Nashville Predators. I do want to keep in mind or point out one thing, too, is that we've seen some line adjustments from Nashville it was really following the loss against Buffalo that we saw some adjustments in the lines from John Hines, the head coach. And Cody Glass has moved up to the number 1 center spot between Duchesne and Forsberg. So that's the big change that we've seen for the Predators. Let's see how he handles it. But look at the spike in ice time in his first game in that center spot on the top line. He goes from basically being a 10, 11, 12-minute a game player up to 17 minutes and 29 seconds of ice time for the Nashville Predators last night against Calgary. So look at the difference just going to that top line spot. So he's going to get opportunities. And again, you're talking about Columbus, one of the worst defensive teams in the NHL this season. You look at this matchup here, you've got Columbus that is currently 31st rather in the NHL in goals per game allowed, 3.9 goals per game allowed by the Jackets this season. So it's a prime opportunity to find great value with Cody Glass tonight for the Nashville Predators on that top line center spot for the Preds between obviously Philip Forsberg, who's been playing really well lately for Nashville, and Duchesne on the other side of him on that top line. Cody Glass props, I'm just taking a glance right now. Plus 490 at Caesars to score a goal. Power play points is plus 520 for a power play point at FanDuel. And if you actually look at the lineup for Nashville and their power play designation going into tonight's game versus the Columbus Blue Jackets, you'll see that Cody Glass is going to get power play minutes here for the Predators tonight. So definitely some good numbers there in terms of Glass. We'll see if he can capitalize. It's interesting because Glass is on the top line. They've dropped Parson into the third line, but Parson is still someone I would look at here for the Predators. He's still been a big-time factor. He has gone on a 7-game point streak for the Nashville Predators. 2, 3, 4, 5, 7, 8, 9 points in those 7 games for Juuso Parssinen of the Nashville Predators. He is dropped to the third line, but he's still getting power play 1 for the Predators, the top power play unit as well. So there's absolutely still, I think, tons of reasons to look at some props involving him as well for the Predators right now. And don't sleep on Thomas Novak either. Here's a guy that's made an impact. He's playing number 1 power play minutes as well for the Predators right now. Again, this is a good night to maybe target Nashville offensively. They only scored 2 last night. I think they're going to be looking to probably be a little bit more assertive offensively tonight. And Thomas Novak is a guy that made an impact immediately when joining the lineup. Again, his spot in the lineup, he's kind of dropped, but it looks like he's still going to get on the power play at the very least. And if that's the case, you could just deviate right to the power play point prop where it's plus 450 on that. So again, you're talking about power play minutes for Novak, and you're talking about a Columbus team coming into this game that, as far as the penalty kill for them is concerned, bottom half of the league. So, opportunities here for some of these props, no doubt, for Nashville. On the Columbus side of the equation, they got their captain, Boone Jenner, back recently. So thank goodness for that. They're at least starting to get some of their injured pieces back from injury. Patrick Laine, of course, has been very, very good lately for the Jackets. 6 points in the last 4 games. He had a hat trick in the victory against Detroit the other night. So keep an eye on his level of play, it's certainly gone up. Again, Jenner comes back against Detroit over the weekend. This will be his third game back from injury. Emil Bemstrom has made an impact, although he's cooled off a little bit of late. Same with Kent Johnson. Marchenko is obviously always worth a consideration. He's been putting the puck in the net lately for them. But definitely Laine has been one of the bigger catalysts lately here for the Jackets. So if there's goals, this might be a decent game to consider some props. All right, Buffalo, Chicago. Sabres, minus 190 road favorites, 6.5 the total in this game. Chicago's got a rest advantage. They've been off since that beatdown against the Seattle Kraken, 8-5 on Saturday night. That's about the only advantage they probably have. Buffalo is probably the better of these two teams. Buffalo's actually played better on the road this year. They're like a Seattle East with what they're doing on the road compared to at home. Buffalo's only 9-14 at Key Bank Center this season in Western New York, but on the road, they're a very, very solid 12-7 away from home this year. 12 of their 21 victories have actually been on the road, the Buffalo Sabres. So they're turning into a little bit of a road warrior here in this matchup. I would only look at the Sabres here. I mean, I feel like an utter fool for taking Chicago on Saturday night. And I only did that because I thought Seattle could just totally mail it in after just the blazing hot road trip. The biggest win of the bunch was against Boston. They could totally just lay a clunker against Chicago. But you have no shot to win a hockey game when you're giving up the 6 first shots end up in the back of your net. And that's exactly what happened to Chicago in that game. 6 shots, 6 goals for Seattle to begin that hockey game against them the other night. Mrazek got pulled. Stalock came in, and he actually gave up goals on the first 2 shots he faced. So it really wasn't any better going after that. So I guess if you want to make a case for Chicago, you can say this team was embarrassed. Peter Mrazek was embarrassed. I get that, but they're not good enough, I think, to do anything about it consistently. I mean, they're not that team. It's like I trust a good team to bounce back off a game like that. Do I trust Chicago to do that? No, I don't. So this one I would look at as Sabres in regulation, which is the way I'm going to go in this one. Buffalo and reg. You'll get that down to even money. They have beaten Chicago 3 times in a row in the recent series head-to-head. They've been close games, but Buffalo has gotten the job done recently head-to-head. In the matchup between these two teams. Certainly would lean over the total with Mrazek in net. That looked like more of a fluke than anything else that he played well against Colorado in that game that they won last week. He really hasn't been good in most games other than that. And it looks like for the Sabres, you would think they're going to probably end up starting Craig Anderson tonight. We saw UPL, Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen get the start yesterday afternoon, rather, for the Sabres. So I probably would think it's going to be Craig Anderson in this game. Yeah, Sabres and reg over 6.5. That would be the ways I'd be betting this one here tonight between these two teams. And as far as props go in this matchup between the Sabres and the Blackhawks, for the Chicago Blackhawks, you look at it's funny, Jonathan Taves, suddenly heating up offensively. 4 points in the last 3 games for Chicago. Max Domi, he has 6 points in the last 5 games, including a couple of goals for Chicago. On the Buffalo side of things, I keep going back to the Dylan Cousins because I think all kinds of value with him and his props at the moment. Of course, it goes without saying that Tuck, Skinner, and Thompson every night, that top line is a threat, but don't sleep on the performance of Dylan Cousins. He's been very, very solid. You get better prices with him in terms of props compared to the top line players of the Sabres. So don't sleep on that. And of course, the defenseman Rasmus Dahlin continues to be just a point producing machine. The last 7 games for the Sabres, he has 5, 6, 8, 9, 10 points in the last 7 games for the Sabres. So definitely keep an eye on that. Some good props here in terms of this game. All right, next up, we've got 2 games left. We go next to Arizona, the desert, Detroit and Arizona. Detroit minus 130, road favorites in this game, and the total sitting at 6.5. Actually, it's down to 6 in some spots, shaded to the over in this game. This is a game where, from a side perspective, it's tough. I've always had an affinity for backing the Coyotes at home at the Mullet Arena, where they had played well, especially for several games in a row right after that month-long trip on the road, but they have certainly not played as well lately at home, and they're just not playing well or winning games, period, right now. This Arizona Coyotes team. So, I think when you look at this game, it's just from a side perspective, I'd probably leave it alone. I mean, this is a weird scheduling spot too for Arizona, where they were at home, they go on the road, they play Minnesota, back home tonight now facing the Detroit Red Wings, who how can you make heads or tails of this team? They beat Winnipeg and Toronto, two terrific home wins, and you absolutely basically a no-show, flat out, is what that was. The other night against the Columbus Blue Jackets at home. I mean, it's just hard to figure it out, with that team, how you can go from beating Winnipeg, beating Toronto at home, and then to losing to Columbus at home. But that's hockey. How many times have we seen this over the years in hockey? Any team can beat anybody on any given night. And we have seen that for sure be a problem for certain teams, that they'll have two big wins against teams you don't expect them to beat. Then the teams you do expect them to beat, they don't get the job done. Detroit also on a back-to-back here. They were in Colorado yesterday. They lose 6-3 to the Avs, so it's definitely a rest advantage here for Arizona. It's definitely a spot advantage for the Coyotes. Make no mistake about that. They've won 4 of the last 5 head-to-head meetings against Detroit. The Red Wings won the most recent meeting in a shootout. But right now, definitely all kinds of issues defensively for the Red Wings, rearing their ugly head again with 10 goals allowed in the last 2 games. So that definitely is not something. Special teams were a disaster for the Red Wings yesterday. They don't score on the power play. They give up 2 power play goals to the Colorado Avalanche in that game. I'd probably lean over here again. I hate to be a broken record here, but you've got Detroit trending that way. 3 of the last 4 meetings have been really high scoring between these two teams. It's not like we trust either team to keep the puck out of their own net right now. And we've got a goaltending matchup of Ingram for the Coyotes and Hellberg for the Detroit Red Wings. It's going to be Magnus Hellberg for Detroit and Connor Ingram for Arizona, your goalie matchup here in this game. And both of these goalies, numbers aren't anything to write home about either. Hellberg, well, actually, Hellberg's not bad. 2.69 goals against, 901 save percentage, but had to come into relief of Husso yesterday in the game against Colorado. Before that, he struggled in a loss against Toronto. Connor Ingram on the flip side. Ingram actually last 2 starts have been better. He only gave up 2 goals to Minnesota, 1 goal to Chicago, but clearly, that's not necessarily something I fully trust to continue moving forward indefinitely. So, I'd probably stay off a side. I could only take Arizona from a side perspective, but it does have that feel to them right now. Like they're just, I don't want to say they're tanking for Bedard, but they're just not finding ways to win right now. And like I said, that great run at home on home ice has cooled off. I'd still lean Coyotes. Don't know if I'll play it. Probably will play the over for some kind of bet here in this one. All right. Final game of this Tuesday card. I think it might be the best game of the night in the NHL. Seattle Kraken, Edmonton Oilers. Edmonton minus 180, home favorite, 6.5 the total in this one. I talked about the absurdity of the schedule that they've placed for at Seattle's feet. Absolutely terrible, but that's enough of that. It is what it is. They got to make do with it. They can't complain. It's brutal that they go on a long-ass road trip. Edmonton, Toronto, Ottawa, Montreal, Buffalo, Boston, Chicago, back home for 1 game and against Tampa, who's rested, by the way, and you only have 1 day off following the road trip back home against Tampa. They obviously didn't have a great game. They lost 4-1, lacking energy a little bit. And now you got to pack your bags, go on the road again, and now play on a back-to-back in Edmonton. It's ridiculous, but they got to do the best they can with it, no question. And we'll see how this one goes. I mean, they're betting the hell out of Edmonton. And look, Edmonton to me is a bet-on team right now. They're playing some really good hockey. They're turning their game around. I've been on the Oilers a bit here in the last several games. I took them against San Jose in various forms. Same thing with Anaheim. And then same thing with Vegas on Saturday. I took them at the small dog price, plus 115, plus 120. And they got a 4-3 win against the Vegas Golden Knights. However, while we're getting a little excited, they've won 3 in a row. They're playing some better hockey, the Oilers. It's something, definitely a positive sign. They're lighting up the scoreboard. Defensively, they've gotten just a little bit better. And Jack Campbell has started to play better in net. He's had this opportunity with Skinner away from the team due to his wife giving birth or about to. And Jack Campbell's seized the day, carpe diem. And that's exactly what he's done. He's taken advantage of this opportunity. He's led his team to victories, and it's been good to see. And Jay Woodcroft right back to Jack Campbell in net tonight for this big game against the Seattle Kraken. We'll see if he can keep up the recent good run. It is worth noting going into this game, this is Jay Woodcroft saying, you know what, Jack Campbell, you've earned another start because Stuart Skinner's back with the team. He's available. He's on the roster. He's back there with the team. He's available to start tonight if need be. But the Jay Woodcroft decided, you know what, we'll let Skinner just, rest another game. Campbell's starting to get his confidence back. We're going to put him back in there again tonight against the Seattle Kraken. So interesting move, but it's Campbell's net once again tonight for the Edmonton Oilers. And on the Seattle side, it was Grubauer in net yesterday against Tampa Bay. So you would think we're going to go back to the number one star of the week in the NHL, if you could believe that. I never thought in a million years that we would be talking about Martin freaking Jones being the number one star of the week in the NHL at any point in his career. Again, I never thought that. But sure enough, last week, back-to-back shutouts, 3 victories for Jones on that epic road trip for the Seattle Kraken. And here is Martin Jones, probably going to be back in net tonight for Seattle here on the back-to-back. He's been good lately. What can you say? I mean, you can't quibble. He has been really, really good here for the Seattle Kraken here in recent games. So he's deserving of the opportunity to be in net again, and he will be likely in net again here for the Seattle Kraken. This is really a tricky game because Edmonton's rolling. I don't feel a huge desire to want to fade them, but I may have to fade them based on this price being what it is, even with this just horrendous scheduling hand that Seattle has been dealt of late. Because we're talking Edmonton minus 180 home favorites in this game, a team that's only 10-13 on home ice. They have not been great at Rogers Place this year, the Oilers. They have had some tough times winning at home. They're 10-13. They have a losing record on home ice. I know they've talked about wanting to improve that and wanting to change that, but it's, minus 180 home favorite for a team that struggled to win on home ice. That's a lot. And now you've got Seattle back on the road where they have this glorious 16-6 road record on the season going into tonight. So this would not be a spot for me to lay minus 180 with Edmonton. Even with the rest advantage, it is also worth noting that even with the rest advantage, Edmonton is coming off a road trip. So yes, they've had the 2 days off. Seattle's on a back-to-back, and they've had a shit ton of travel, as I've mentioned. But Edmonton's not in the best of spots. They were on the road through LA, Anaheim, San Jose, Vegas. Now you're back home after those 4 games. So, it's definitely still a better spot for Edmonton because of the 2 days off. And Seattle's just, this is gone through the ringer with this schedule. But there's still some trickiness to this game and this spot for Edmonton. And they're the minus 180 favorite, not Seattle. So I could only look Seattle here, plus price. I'll probably sprinkle on that a little bit. Do I love that the games have just piled up at an alarming rate for Seattle with all this travel, and you just come back home for one game and you're on the road again? That's not a great situation at all. But I mean, we are talking about a team that's just found ways to play well on the road. They've done it consistently all year long. So at plus 160, it's Seattle for yours truly. Now I'm keeping it very small in this game because of the just all the intense travel that Seattle has played. But I have to look toward the Kraken for something at plus 160 tonight. But the bet that I really like in this game is definitely over the total, and maybe my favorite total of the board here tonight. You're talking about an Edmonton team that's been flying over. We've been on Edmonton team totals over. We've been on the full game overs lately for Edmonton, cashing repeatedly 6-3, 6-2, 7-1, 4-3 in their last 4 games. All of those games going over the total. We have a head-to-head series history between Seattle and Edmonton since the Kraken have entered the league. that has gone over the total in every head-to-head game between these two teams, including both meetings already this year. 7-2 Edmonton in Seattle, 5-2 Seattle in Edmonton. Both of those games going over the total. So over 6.5 for me here is the even stronger opinion for me in this game between the Kraken and the Oilers. Prop-wise, Matty Beniers, I don't even have to say it anymore. He's just incredibly surging right now for the Kraken. The surefire winner probably of the Calder at this point, barring a catastrophe. Eberle is starting to heat up. Wenberg and McCann, don't sleep on them. And Eeli Tolvanen, I'm going to keep mentioning him. Eeli Tolvanen for the Seattle Kraken. He has taken advantage of this opportunity, and he's always worth a look in terms of his props. As far as Edmonton goes, the big news being Evander Kane is finally back. Great to hear. Throw his personal business aside. We know he could have done better in terms of the way he handled himself personally away from the ice, but it's good from a hockey standpoint, from a human being's well-being standpoint, that he's back from that scary incident in Tampa where he almost had his hand cut, the skate blade that was very, very dangerous. He was leaking blood. They did a great job getting on that right away, and it looks like Evander Kane is expected to be in the lineup. They say he's got to pass one more test, but they expect him to be in the lineup tonight for the Oilers. Although it looks like Jay Woodcroft's going to ease him in, not putting him back on the top line right away with Connor McDavid. Right now have him slotted to play alongside Ryan McLeod and Warren Foegele on the third line for the Edmonton Oilers. So keep that in mind. Klim Kostin, the Nuge, and Matthias Janmark slated to be the second line for the Oilers. Yamamoto, by the way, was placed on IR today for the Oilers. And it looks like Draisaitl, McDavid, and Hyman, a loaded up top line, could be in the cards for Jay Woodcroft and the Oilers tonight in this game if the current line combinations are any indication. Loading it up, and that line would be, let's just say, fun to watch. It's always fun to watch when McDavid and Draisaitl are on the same line. But then you got the hard-working Zach Hyman, the grunt, the blood and guts of the line that does all the heavy lifting, does all the hard work, does all of the forechecking, throws his weight around to open up space on the ice for McDavid and Draisaitl. How fun is it going to be to watch that trio together? Now, the thing about Woodcroft that makes him very good, in my opinion, I know this year it's been up and down all over the place for Edmonton, but I don't blame him. He's always looking to adjust. He's always looking to see what's not working. How do we make it work? How do we get better? How do we change? How do we adapt on the fly? How do we adjust on the fly? He doesn't stick with status quo. He's willing to adjust in game. And I don't know how long he's going to keep things with Hyman, Draisaitl, and McDavid together on the same line. But just conceptually, that line could be just beyond dangerous, beyond incredible, because you've got the incredible high-level skill and speed, for that matter, playmaking, hands, finishing ability, all that of McDavid and Draisaitl. And then you got the worker bee right next to them, Zach Hyman, who will do all the grunt work to get that puck free and find his teammates, find his line mates. It's got just an absolutely terrific possibility. I'm excited to see how if Woodcroft keeps this line together for at least a handful of games and how well they play together. It could be very, very special to see that line play. It's a great prop game, too, for Edmonton. Klim Kostin, you have to bet Klim Kostin. You do. We've been riding that. We've been talking about Klim Kostin. He's still on a top 6 forward role. 4 goals, 4 points in the last 3 games for Klim Kostin of the Oilers. He's definitely, I think, still incredible value. On a game like this where you should see plenty of pace, chances, ultimately should see plenty of goals as well. You could go with any of those guys on the top line, but if you want value, if you want the bargain bin, you go with Klim Kostin, who is, still, they've adjusted it down a little bit. You're not getting the plus 400 or plus 500 anymore. I have noticed that, but you can still get plus 375 with Kostin to score a goal tonight for the Oilers at Caesars. Still a very good price, excellent price still for him to find the back of the net for Edmonton. And also, if you go actually to Bet365, it's plus 320. It's actually not as good at Bet365. So plus 375 at Caesars does look to be the best price there with Klim Kostin anytime goal scorer in this game tonight for the Edmonton Oilers. Matthias Janmark on that second line. Like, again, if you're looking for value, He's playing with Kostin and the Nuge. That line has had some nice chemistry. Janmark scored against Vegas in the victory on Saturday night, and he has 4 points in the last 3 games. And Janmark is in that same type of price range, plus 390, plus 400 to score a goal tonight. So some excellent prop value with those 2 players in particular, Kostin and Janmark here for the Edmonton Oilers tonight. Worth a look, in my opinion. All right, great stuff. That is the Tuesday card. Thanks to everyone for, as always, tuning in live on YouTube or listening to the Ice Guys podcast. Hit the like button on the way out. We appreciate it. Another show chock full of analysis and insight from a betting perspective. And we certainly appreciate everyone that tunes in live on YouTube, watching the show, or listening to the podcast. There's no way we can keep doing this show year in and year out. This is now our 6th year of the Ice Guys show. 6 years already. Almost can't believe it's been that long, but we can't keep doing it without all of your support. Speaking of support our sponsors, because we're going to hear from another one right now. Before we get to best bets, let's hear from Manscaped. Support for the Ice Guys is brought to you by Manscaped, our good friends at Manscaped, who are the best in men's below-the-waist grooming. Their products are precision-engineered tools for your family jewels. Manscaped's Performance Package, the ultimate men's hygiene bundle. Join over 7 million men worldwide who trust Manscaped with this exclusive offer for you, courtesy of the Ice Guys. Get 20% off of any purchase and free worldwide shipping with the promo code Ice Guys. That's promo code Ice Guys, all one word, ICEGUYS at manscaped.com. If my math is correct, that's about 400 million balls that you can help preserve with manscaped.com using the promo code Ice Guys. You get the Performance Package 4.0. It is a game changer. The Lawnmower 4.0. It takes care of this, among other things. It'll keep you trim as can be. The Lawnmower 4.0, waterproof. Same thing with the Weed Whacker, which takes care of your ear hair, nose hair. I mean, nose hair in particular. I'm getting up there in age, and nose hair is becoming definitely more of an issue. This will take care of it. It feels like someone's tickling the inside of your nostrils sometimes. It pisses the hell out of me. It bothers me. I need to take care of that shit. This will take care of it for you. The Weed Whacker. Make part of the package that you get with your Manscaped purchase and the Manscaped Performance Package 4.0. You also get the ball toner. You also get the ball deodorant, keep you smelling good and looking good and feeling good down in the nether regions. This package is really going to make you feel good and look good and look better, slim, trim. That's what it's all about. And manscaped.com can help you out with that. So make sure you take advantage of this. Manscaped.com. Get 20% off and free shipping with the promo code Ice Guys at manscaped.com. That's 20% off with free shipping at manscaped.com, and use the promo code Ice Guys. Unlock your confidence and always use the right tools for the job with Manscaped. All right, we are back here on the Ice Guys, and we are ready to wrap this show up, as we always do, with best bets. And to me, there is only one clear best bet on this card, and we're going back to the game we just talked about. Seattle-Edmonton over 6.5, minus 125. 5 overs in the series history between the Kraken and the Oilers since Seattle became a franchise. Both meetings earlier this regular season flew over the total. Edmonton's games have gone over in 4 straight. Both teams offensively capable. Evander Kane added to the lineup. And if anything, that could actually make things a little tougher defensively, because when you put in a new player back into the lineup, sometimes your defensive communication and stuff is a little thrown out of whack. So that probably helps the over as well. So Seattle-Edmonton over 6.5. Best bet here for this Tuesday card. And that'll wrap up this edition of the Ice Guys. Thanks to everyone in the chat for joining us. Hit the like button on the way out. We appreciate it. A reminder, the Ice Guys is live 7 days a week, Monday to Friday, 2 p.m. Eastern, Saturday and Sunday, noon Eastern. If you can't watch the show live, download the Ice Guys podcast in audio form on all major podcast platforms: Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, and more. Download the Ice Guys podcast when you can't watch the show live. And another reminder, Betcast 1 week from today, our January live Betcast. Man, we're looking forward to that. Tuesday, January 24th at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. Join us for that. I'm Ian Cameron. Have a great Tuesday night. Enjoy the games and good luck. And we will talk to you again tomorrow on Wednesday for another edition of the Ice Guys presented by National Hockey Now.